This is Nikki Collins.
Jordan Canada.
Essence Carson.
Liz Candace.
Imani Media Stafford.
And you're listening to WNBA Weekly.
What's up, WNBA fans? Welcome to another episode of WNBA Weekly, your source for all things women's basketball and the WNBA. My name is Kyle Haywood, and I'm joined by my good friend Jason Snow tonight. How we doing, Jason?
Dude, I am doing fantastic. I'm excited. EuroLeague is coming to an end, which has some interesting news of its own that I'm sure we'll talk about, and some disappointing news. But it's finally time. All eyes are on the WNBA, and I'm excited about that. So.
Absolutely. Also joining us tonight is one of our favorite people of all time, the W Hoops blogger herself, Aneela Kahn. Aneela, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. I can't wait to talk.
Absolutely. We're super excited to have you on the show. For those of you who don't know Aneela, Aneela, how about you let everybody know where they can find you on Twitter and tell us about your blog a little bit?
Okay, sure, no problem. So I do currently a women's basketball blog that covers women's college basketball as well as the international game, mostly Canadian basketball, as well as the WNBA. It's www.wbasketballblog.com. And on Twitter, it's very simple. It's at Hoops Blogger, so WHOOPS Blogger. And you can find all my musings, everything that I cover or do from women's college basketball to WNBA to international.
Absolutely, yeah. If you haven't had a chance to read some of Aneela's stuff, if you want really good insights and I really think some of the breaking news, it seems like, Aneela, you have some good connections and stuff because you often are at the front lines of some of the news stories and stuff. It's definitely worth checking out. We'll throw out links to all of that on our Twitter. So if you're looking for her, we'll make sure to have links to her blog and links to her Twitter handle as well coming out with this episode. So we really appreciate having her on. She's a great source of knowledge.
Absolutely. Before we hop into what our main discussion is going to be today, we're going to be breaking down each team and kind of giving an overall grade. We're going to individually give out some grades to each team when it comes to the draft night that we just had this last week. But before we do that, we do have obviously some breaking news. And I don't mean that at all as a pun. Breanna Stewart going down with an injury to her Achilles tendon in the EuroLeague final, playing for Dynamo Kursk. Just an absolute horrible story that obviously we've been thinking a lot about Bree the last 24 hours or so as this has come about. From what we're able to tell right now, it looks like she'll be having surgery in Los Angeles here soon. The official extent of the injury has not been released, but from what we are kind of piecing together what we're able to find, it seems like at best a severe strain of the Achilles tendon, most likely a break or a tear in the Achilles tendon that's going to be quite extensively hindering her joining the league this year. I want to toss this one over to Aneela first. Aneela, I want to hear what was kind of your initial thoughts and reaction when you either heard or saw the injury. I'm just curious what was kind of going through your mind as far as her future and the future of the league.
Well, yesterday when I got on Twitter, I had just gone out for a walk, and I had just come back just to check on the EuroLeague title game because, as women's basketball fans know, more than half of the players go overseas to supplement their WNBA player salaries. And so when I saw that injury, I knew, I was like, oh no, that's not good, because not only is Breanna Stewart one of the most popular and one of the most best players there is, she's also the MVP. So you're basically now not having the MVP on in the season, which means you cannot market to everyone else to come watch your games. Not only that, but this is going to have an impact on the upcoming CBA discussions that are going to happen. It's also going to have an impact on the Storm because they cannot defend their title without Breanna Stewart. So now they're in like a little bit of a panic mode, I would say, because now they have to look for replacements for her. And now it's going to become like, are they going to try to tank the season, or are they going to like go forward and try their best? I mean, I don't know. There's like a lot of questions, and a lot of players, WNBA players, tweeted their thoughts about the injuries because some of them have been through this stuff. And a lot of the people who have been around the women's game for now like 10 years were like, we need to do something because we keep losing these people. We keep losing these players to 12-year rounds to 12 months when they play 12 months a year or close to it. And so if the league doesn't do something soon, then the players are eventually just going to break. And so that's my thought.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I saw an argument on Twitter that basically like, the NBA has summer league and they have the Olympics and they've got practices and drills and all this stuff. And it was trying to argue that the women shouldn't complain about this overseas ball. And I completely disagree with that. And for a lot of reasons, one of which is that, the Olympics happens every 4 years and that's on both sides. So that's equal. Like that's not an advantage or disadvantage to men. The Olympics is both sides once every 4 years. But in terms of summer league, like when was the last time you saw LeBron in the summer league? Like that's when you empty the bench, you go easy, and that's not what's happening over in Europe. Over in Europe, they're playing competitive basketball partially because they're getting paid, sometimes double or even more what they're being paid here in the States to play basketball. I think it's ridiculous. I think that we talked about it previously on the show that if the NBA really wants to move forward, they need to see the WNBA as an investment and put the money into it so that they can put good product. I mean, you're coming into two of the most recognizable names in the WNBA to either passing fans, people who watch games every once in a while, or people who don't even really follow it, are Breanna Stewart and Maya Moore. And Maya Moore's is because of a decision, but we're coming into a year where you're not going to have those two names, and that's a huge hit in terms of like Aneela said, the ability to publicize it, the ability to push it, and even just the ability to have the best players on the court. I mean, there is no replacing Breanna Stewart. Seattle is going to be worse off this year without her. There's just no way around that.
I was considering that as well. The window for the Seattle Storm really opened up this last season for them to, potentially have a 2 to 3 year span where they're right at the top of the league. With Bree going down this season and Sue Bird having already been the oldest player in the league for a little while, that's kind of a scary place to be for Seattle. Obviously, you've got, some players backing up, Sue Bird and Bree that have some potential, but it's really hard to see someone like Jordan Canada stepping in right off the bat. Let's say Sue Bird were to retire at the end of this season and, she misses her last season playing with Stewie. There's some major impacts. And I know we're talking a little bit about the Storm, but this is league wide. This is game wide. This is across the board for not only WNBA players, but players that are playing, overseas. There's some players that we've seen in the past play strictly overseas and decide to forego the WNBA season to, be more prepared for, Euro League or international commitments, things like that. So one thing I love that Aneela brought up was the CBA discussions that will be ongoing. And I think that this right here is going to be Exhibit A for the players to show and say, listen, if you truly care about us as assets to your organization, you need to help us to the point to where we aren't having to go overseas and play year round. I know what Stewie's making on her contract, and it's honestly, it would be tough to live in the Seattle area on that kind of an income. And so that's, needless to say about, Liberty players or Sparks players, which are playing in markets that are even more difficult for them to, find living that's affordable under the current CBA, current CBA regulation. So I think this is going to be huge, a huge story moving forward. Unfortunate, obviously, with a lot of negatives coming. If there is a positive coming, possibly waking up the league and some of their officials in the CBA discussions, and hopefully we see something positive come from this. But obviously, our thoughts are with Bree and her family and the Storm and the whole league in general. That's obviously hurting right now. This has been kind of a tough 24 hours to get through, so we understand. But with that being all mentioned, we do want to hear from you guys on Twitter at WNBA Weekly. Go ahead and send us your takes on all of this and where you think some of the biggest impact is going to come with the Breanna Stewart injury. But with that, guys, let's go ahead and move on to our actual main discussion that we're going to have today. Our WNBA draft grade sheet. All right, so here's how this is going to work. Each one of the three of us is going to have an opportunity to go through and basically give a grade for each team. We're going to go in draft order, so we'll start with number 1 Aces, number 2 Liberty, number 3 Fever, on down. I just figured that would be the best way to cover this, since that's the order they were put in, and every team got a first round pick this season, which doesn't always happen. So we're going to go with that order. Starting off with Las Vegas, we're each going to give a quick take. You can hear our grades that we give, and from there we will give a quick little discussion on. One of us will give a quick reason why we gave the grade that we gave. So let's start things off. Number 1, Las Vegas Aces. They only had one pick in the whole draft. They took Jackie Young first overall. Jason, what grade do you give the Aces?
I'm gonna give them an A minus.
A minus. Okay, interesting. Aneela, what grade do you give the Aces?
An A.
An A, nice. I actually have the Aces at about a B. I think I have them I don't know. One thing for me is I do feel like they possibly left the best overall player on the board, but I do think they were smart in picking where their main need was. I think that Asia Dur, they're already kind of pretty stacked at an Asia Dur type of player. They've got Kayla McBride already fulfilling a role. I think Jackie Young fits into their rotation a little bit better. Aneela, you gave an A, so I want to hear your take real quick on why you gave them an A.
Well, when Sabrina Ionescu decided she wasn't going to enter the draft, I think at that point the Aces management, so Bill Lambier, was looking at players, and I don't think he was completely satisfied with Asia Dur as his number 1 overall pick. And so when Jackie Young decided she was going to declare early, because she was also a junior, I think he decided, okay, this player, Jackie Young, can do so much for our team. Not only that, but I feel like she fits what Bill Lambier wants in his guard, because she's tough and she's strong, and she can do so much. And so that's why I'm giving them an A, because I feel like Jackie Young can do so much for that team, and she can help Bill Lambier become that player that he wants his team to have.
I like that. I do think that Jackie Young puts the Aces in a position where, now that they've kind of figured things out, they seem to really figure things out towards the end of last season. Adding a player of her caliber into a position of need, I think they're going to be a team to be reckoned with this upcoming season. So, but let's move on to the New York Liberty. Let's go with Aneela. Let's have you go first, and then I'll give my grade, and then Jason. What grade do you give the Liberty, Aneela?
A B.
Jason?
I'm going to give them a B minus.
Okay. I'm actually going with a B as well. But Aneela, I want to hear your thoughts on the Liberty.
All right. So the first pick they had was Asia Dur, which I thought was a really great pick for New York, because they need a franchise superstar kind of player to go along with Tina Charles. I had no problems with that. It was just afterwards, their picks that they selected. Han Exu, for example, she's not going to come play for the Liberty for, I guess, 2 to 3 years, because she said she wasn't coming over for 2 to 3 years. So they have to wait for her. And then the next one was Megan Huff. I don't know if she's number 26. I don't know if she's going to make the team. So I don't know how much of an impact she's really going to have. So that's why I'm giving them a B. Because some of their picks, like Asia Dur, was impressive. But the other ones, I'm a little bit iffy on.
Very similar thoughts. The Hanju, I think, is an interesting pick. I don't know if I agree with it for many of the same reasons as Aneela, and partially because I think that as she comes into the U.S. game, I think there's going to be a bit of a development period with that. So if she does decide to take this year off and even the next year playing for Team China, and on top of that having to let someone develop, I don't know if she was worth the 14th pick. I think there were still better players on the board. I do like the Megan Huff pick, but the Hanju, it's just a little bit of a risky pick for an organization that I don't think can take very many risks right now.
Okay, I love it. Let's move on to the Fever. I've got the Fever at an A- for this one. They only had 3 picks and only 1 first round pick. The other 2 picks are late third round picks. So I've got them at an A-. Jason, what do you have them at?
I'm going to give them an A-. A-.
Aneela?
B.
A B. Jason, I want to hear your takes on Indiana.
My take on Indiana, A-. I think that a third round pick for Paris Key is actually a pretty good pick. I think she could have gone higher in the draft, so I like that one. And I think Tiara McCowan is exactly what Indiana needs. I think that I said this during our I think it was during our live draft coverage. She'll be able to kind of control the game a little bit. She has a strong enough presence that she'll keep Indiana in games, which I think is what they need at this point. Obviously, they've struggled the last few seasons. So having someone on the court that can just kind of slow down a run, maybe break up, have a nice block or something like that, is going to be a really big get for them. So I think that's exactly who they needed from this draft.
Okay, love it. Chicago. Let's move on to Chicago. Aneela, what do you have for Chicago?
I was really disappointed in Chicago's draft. It's kind of, so I'm going to have to give them a C. I wasn't really impressed.
Jason?
I'm going to personally give them a B, and in honor of Logan, I'm going to announce his grade, which is an A++.
I'm a little bit like Aneela. I've got him at a C- for Chicago. My initial thoughts are, I do think that Katie Lou is a fantastic player. However, I feel like there are some areas that Chicago should have maybe shored up their game. They're already a really solid outside team with a great backcourt. And Katie Lou's kind of that wing player that is going to add another 3-point threat to the team. And I feel like they already have kind of that outside presence. So they're kind of going all in on this identity that they have. And I feel like there were some other areas that I would have liked to see them go. I thought personally that they would possibly go with someone like a Nafisa Collier. That's kind of where I expected her to go. I thought she might have been a better fit, but they went with the other UConn player, Katie Lou. Either of you guys have any thoughts on Chicago? We seem to be a little bit further down on them than other teams. So I'm curious if either of you had a take on that.
I'll agree with you on a lot of stuff. I think that there were still players on the board that would have fit better in terms of making Chicago a complete team. I really do think that it seems like they're really leaning into let's just have an offensive team and just try to outrun everybody and outscore everybody. That works sometimes until you come up against a well-rounded team. And so I think it'll make watching their games more interesting, but I don't know if it was the best strategic move in terms of creating a well-rounded team that could try to make a deep playoff run.
One thing about the Chicago Sky, both their 4th and their 15th picks, I felt like there were much better players on the board at both of those spots. And so that's kind of where I, again, was a little bit down. That being said, having Katie Lou play alongside Allie Quigley and Courtney Vandersloot, I think is going to be a lot of fun to watch this season. Let's go to Dallas. Jason, what grade do you give Dallas?
I'm going to give Dallas a B+.
I'm sitting at a B for Dallas. Aneela, how about you?
I'm giving them an A.
An A, okay. Aneela, I want to hear your takes. Why do they get an A?
because I think they filled some great needs. For example, Skylar Diggins-Smith is pregnant, and even though I've heard that she's coming back, or I don't know, but it would probably be towards later of the season. So they picked Arike. I'm gonna not say her name correctly, so I apologize. Arike Ogunbowale with the 5th pick. That's pretty solid. That's a really great scoring guard to help make up some scoring while Skylar Diggins-Smith is out. And then they got Megan Gustafson with the 17th pick, which is like a steal at 17. She was, I believe, National Player of the Year. And you're getting her at 17. That's fantastic. And then Kennedy Burke, she's solid. And they got her in the 2nd round. I mean, I feel like Dallas stocked up. They looked at what they had. They looked at what possibly could leave. And that's why I gave them the grade that they gave. And Morgan Birch, most people don't know about Morgan Birch, but she might have an outside chance of making the roster. And I mean an outside chance. I don't think she has that great of a chance, but because she can stretch the defense, and a lot of people don't get to see her play because she plays for a small school in UC Davis. But I'm really impressed by her. So I have to give Dallas Wings a good grade, and that's why I gave them an A.
Yeah,
I agree with a lot of that. I think that man, I'm really, really high on Megan Gustafson, but I'm kind of low on Arike Ogunbowale. I get their idea, though. They're losing Skydig and Liz Cambage. And so like a huge chunk of their scoring. And then if you look at who they went and got, all 4 players that they got are very capable of putting up major points. Morgan Birch, even their 3rd round pick, we got to get somebody who can score. And so I love the fact that they went with that. I don't know. I think I might be a little bit further. I might not be as high on Arike as a lot of other people are. That being said, that's probably good news for Arike because I was also super down on Ariel Atkins, and look what she did last year. So, Jason, you had a quick take on Dallas.
I was just gonna say, I think Gustafson was the steal of the draft. The fact that she made it to the 17th overall pick is kind of fat. I don't know what the right word is. I don't even believe it. She was the AP Player of the Year. She was the Naismith Player of the Year. She was the semifinalist for the Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, there's just no way that I think she should have fallen that low. I think she'll be in the league 7, 8, 9, 10 years from now. I think she's a long-term player, and to get her 17th overall in a WNBA draft where going in the 2nd round means that you probably have a short life. I mean, some people make it, but a lot of 2nd rounders kind of have a short WNBA career. So to see her go that low, I think Agler was just sitting there dancing as the picks got closer, and she was still on the board. So I
agreed.
Yeah, so I think that was the great pick. You and I, Kyle, have talked before on Ogunbowale. I'm high on Ogunbowale, but I was high on her maybe as like an 8th or 9th pick. That's probably where I would have put her. So that's why I didn't give them an A. I went down. I think I gave them a B plus. I don't even remember anymore, but I think it was a B plus.
All right, let's move on. There was a lot of takes on Dallas, but I feel like that's well worth it. Now, Minnesota had 5 picks. They went with Nafisa Collier first in the 1st round as the 6th overall pick. They also picked up, they had like 3 out of 5 picks in a row. Boom, boom, boom. Jessica Shepard, Natasha Heidemann, and Sierra Dillard. Just some really, really like just a ton coming into Minnesota, giving them a lot of options moving forward. I gave them a B plus on this one. Aneela, what were your thoughts on Minnesota?
I also give them a B plus.
And Jason?
I was going to give them an A minus.
Okay, Jason, I want to hear your takes on Minnesota.
I think Nafisha and Jessica are 2 amazing picks. I think that they got a lot out of Nafisha Collier. I think that she's a consistent player who's going to perform for them for at least a few years here, right out the gate, especially as they're trying to cope with building a new dynamic without Maya Moore and without I'm blanking on her name. I can see her face, Lindsay Whalen. There it is. But as they're trying to sort of create this new dynamic in their team, I think that they can kind of build around her and her skill set. And then the lower ones, I think they took some risks, but I think that having 5 picks, they were able to do that. So, I mean, you're pulling people out of Buffalo. You haven't seen them against as tough of competition. So with Sierra Dillard coming out of Buffalo, she might turn out really well. She might not. But I mean, when it's your 3rd and 4th and 5th pick in the draft, you can take a little bit of risk. So I'm totally okay with what they did there.
Absolutely. Aneela, you actually called Jessica Shepard going to Minnesota. You had her going exactly where she went. I don't know about you, Aneela, but Jessica Shepard's one player that for me was kind of not super high on my radar at the beginning of the NCAA season, but really started to catch my attention more as the year went on. I just want to hear your take on her specifically.
On Jessica Shepard? Well, Jessica Shepard, it's funny how she left Minnesota, like the college, and now she ends up back in Minnesota. Well, Jessica Shepard is interesting because this year Notre Dame focused on, so Brianna Turner was responsible for the other Notre Dame forward, senior forward, who also got drafted into the WNBA. She was responsible for all the defense and rebounding. So Jessica Shepard was actually responsible for her passing, for her shooting ability. So I think she'll actually do well in Minnesota because I think they need it. But I'm interested to see also how she does in the pros. I think she might make the team because I think Minnesota needs her. But I'm interested to see how her game comes to the WNBA level because I still think she still needs a little bit more work in order to become a good WNBA player.
Absolutely. No, that's a fantastic take. That's kind of how I looked at it. I thought that she, the way that she physically changed her body throughout the season to be a little bit more mobile. That and the fact that she was able to do that throughout the season says a lot to me. Putting in extra work and making herself a little bit more of a mobile forward. I think just that kind of a work ethic I have to respect. And so I'm interested to see what she does with Minnesota. I think she has a pretty decent shot as well. LA. Let's go to LA. Aneela, what grade do you give LA?
A B.
Jason.
I'm going to give them a B, but they still have a chance to turn it into an A.
I'm going with a B plus on LA, and it's for one reason and one reason only, and it's because Kalani Brown at number 7 overall screams we're ready to trade for Liz Cambage.
Yep.
That's when that pick happened, that's immediately what came to mind was let's draft somebody that will help fill a need that Dallas is going to want if we can get Liz Cambage. I think that seeing Kalani Brown in Dallas would actually be amazing. If you could have Kalani Brown, Agun Bawale, and Megan Gustafson all joining that roster, that's kind of been a little, gutted of a lot of their offense and production from their 2-star players probably being on. That's the reason I went with LA at that high. Did either of you kind of see that pick as a potential trade pick with Dallas moving forward?
Yeah, that's exactly why I gave it a B, but still could become an A, is because if the roster stands as it is now, I think it's a B. I think Brown will be a useful tool to the Sparks, but maybe not exactly where they should have gone. I think if they're able to pull Liz Cambage out of it and get her, kind of under the rim rebounds and scoring prowess that we saw on full display last year with the Wings, I think that it could become an A. So if that is the move that they're making, I say it's an A. If it's not and they're keeping Kalani Brown, I'd give them a B.
Absolutely. Let's move on. I know our time's getting a little bit short here, so we'll move on and hit the rest of these picks real quick. Phoenix. I've got Phoenix as an A-, because I'm also going to include a little bit of their trades that went down right around the draft. So I'm going to go with an A- for Phoenix. Jason, how about you?
I gave Phoenix a B.
And Aneela?
A+.
All right. Aneela, I want to hear your take on an A+, because I have a feeling that you and I have some similar thoughts for the Mercury this draft night.
Well, I mean, their drafting was I really liked it because, listen, Diane Truss can't play forever, so they were looking for some young players who could help them and to help get give Diana Taurasi and the people and the players around them one more shot at like a title. So they went with Alana Smith from Stanford, which I thought was a great pick, also because they have that Australia connection with her coach, with the coach Sandy Bondello. And then Brianna Turner, again, great pick, because what can she do? She can provide defense and rebounding for them. Sophie Cunningham, who dropped to 13, and I thought people were a little bit hesitant on Sophie Cunningham becoming a draft pick just because they felt like maybe her game isn't going to translate. But I feel like at 13 at Phoenix, going to Phoenix, it's like perfect for her. I think she'll do really well there. And then there's like two late third round picks that there's one late third round pick, Erica Carter. I don't know if she'll make the team or not, but I really liked everything the Mercury did on draft night to help address their needs and help go for that. I don't want to say last title run, but close to it for Diana Taurasi.
I'd agree with you. I think that Phoenix. I was thinking Atlanta because of the trade that the Brianna Turner Marie Gulich trade. But Phoenix to me was seconds away from making an appearance in the finals and a probable title going up against a Washington team. I think if Phoenix could have pulled out Game 5 against the Storm, they also could have swept Washington. So they were that close, literal seconds away from a probable title last season, and they have done nothing but absolutely shore up and improve this offseason. They, to me, are a team that is poised to. They're my favorite, and they were my favorite before Bree went down, and especially now that Stewie's gone down. I think that this is Phoenix coming in with a bang and saying, all right, we're 100%, all of our chips are on the table. We're going for a title this season right now. And I loved it. I loved everything that they're doing. They seem to be 100% in on this season, and I'm excited to see what they've got moving forward. Connecticut. Let's go to Connecticut. Jason, what do you got, Connecticut?
I'm going to give them a B+.
Aneela, Connecticut.
B-.
I've got Connecticut at a C+. Not overly impressed. I feel like I do really like the Christina Nigwe pick. But everything else, I don't know. I'm not super high on the rest of their draft night. Christina Nigwe makes sense. I feel like Nigwe was kind of one of those players that, much like Connecticut is a team that is just a team. I feel like there's hardly been a one single standout player for the Sun, just because they just play so well. They defend well, they rebound well, and that's just Kurt Miller basketball. Anigwe fits that mold perfectly. I saw a tweet. I can't remember. I wish I could give whoever it was credit, but I saw somebody tweet out. It might have even been you, Aneela. I don't know. But I saw a tweet on draft night that said, "Good luck getting a rebound against Connecticut this season." You just look at who they've got on the inside, and it's just rebounding machines, and Anigwe is right there. So not super high, but because I do think that there were other players on the board that could have been a better fit for Connecticut and maybe fit some more of their needs. But it's hard to be down on a Connecticut team that takes the defensive player of the year and someone whose stats, just their box scores were as impressive as Anigwe. We'll move on to the Mystics. Mystics with a 10th overall pick, Kiera Leslie, and a 34th overall pick, Sam Heurig from Louisville. This one, to me, has left a lot of people's heads scratching, a lot of people scratching their heads over this, especially that 10th overall pick. But I want to hear what you guys have to say. I've got the Mystics. I gave them a C- on this one. Aneela, I want to hear your thoughts.
I agree with you. I'm also giving them a C-. I was not that impressed.
Yeah, I put
Jason.
them down as a C.
A B. Okay. Aneela, I want to hear your thoughts on the Mystics.
Well, when they took Kiera Leslie as the number 10th overall pick, and she obviously was not one of the draft prospects invited, I was I think I remember tweeting something like, "Oh, he took another pick," or someone corrected me and was like, "He did the same last year with Ariel Atkins," and I was like, "Oh, okay," because Kiara Leslie, like, she's a good player, but I didn't think she was a first round draft pick kind of player. I would have taken her in the second if it were up to me. And so that's why I wasn't really that impressed by their pick. I like the Sam Furing pick, though. They got her at 34, which I think is a steal at 34, because I don't think she's actually a third round pick. I think she could be the second round pick just because she's solid. She can shoot the ball. She has great size. So that's why I'm gonna give, like, that's why I gave them a C minus, I believe, just because I just wasn't that impressed. Like, it wasn't a good draft pick for them.
Yeah, no,
Agreed.
I gave them
go
a
ahead,
C,
Jason.
Kyle, and I fully expect that when you and I are talking in about 3 months from now, I'll be finding this audio, pulling it up, and then we'll be laughing at ourselves for picking C, because obviously that's what they did last year with Ariel Atkins. But as of right now, I can't justify giving them anything higher than a C for Kiara Leslie. There were so many players on the board. I mean, I can think of 5 names right off the top of my head where I would have taken them instead of Kiara Leslie at that spot.
Yeah, had the Sam Furing pick not happened, I would have probably give them a D or a D minus. But I agree with Aneela. The fact that Sam was still available that late, like, and they were able to snag her, I thought was really solid. I anticipated Sam to actually go before Leslie. I thought that would happen. But because I had Leslie as a early third round pick and Fury as about a mid second round pick, so. That was the only salvaging on this one. Again, you guys know I gave the Mystics an F last season because they picked Ariel Atkins, and she kind of shut me up on that one. So, so we'll see we'll see what happens there. Atlanta Dream. I gave the Dream. I gave him a B minus on this one. Jason, I want to hear what your thoughts are on Atlanta.
I gave Atlanta a C as well.
And Aneela.
I'm agreeing with him, and I'm going to say it's a C for me too.
Okay, Jason, I want to hear your take on Atlanta.
I mean, so you have to also understand the situation that Atlanta's in. They didn't have maybe the best picks. I mean, they had the 11th, but then they had 23rd and 35th. So I'm not as worried about what happened with those ones. I don't necessarily see them being big parts of the team. Brianna Turner out of Notre Dame. And then trading that for Marie Gulick, I don't see that as being beneficial to their team this next year. I don't think that fits Atlanta's playing style. I don't think that makes them a better contender this year. So I'm kind of curious to see what Nikki Collins does, because she surprised us last year with a lot of offseason moves and stuff like that. But this just didn't make sense to me.
No, I agree with just about all those takes. I think that I was underwhelmed. Not super impressed. I wasn't maybe disappointed. Isn't the right word, but I felt like that was it didn't catch my attention. You know, I feel like it was just kind of a meh, whatever, kind of a day for Atlanta. But who knows? Atlanta definitely surprised a lot of people last season. You know, just a couple games out of first place. So. Let's move on. Last but not least, the Seattle Storm. Jason, what'd you give them?
I'm going to give them a B.
Aneela.
I agree with Jason. Another B.
We're going 3 for 3 on the Bs. I give them a B now. I think that had Bree Stewart gotten injured a week earlier, I think they play this draft differently. I think that they change up a little bit their strategy here, but yeah, I wasn't overly impressed, wasn't overly disappointed. I thought a solid B. I really like McGregor from Australia. I think she's fantastic. I think that she's got a ton of potential. She's obviously a long-term strategy type player for them. I feel like it was just very apparent that they were just saying, hey, let's continue to look for the future. We're kind of set where we're at now. Let's build our future up. And that just made a lot of sense to me. Aneela, I want to hear your take on Seattle.
Well, this is when we, like what you said about before Brianna Stewart's injury. So they just, I think that time we're looking at how to shore up their depth. because if you look at their picks, like Ezzy Megabor, I don't know if she'll play this season or not. Enreal Howard is a solid pick because she can defend, she can rebound, and they got her at 24, which is pretty great. Macy Miller, a lot of people don't know, but she's a really tough guard. She can play too. So I think I tweeted this, but I don't remember. But I think she might make this roster just because she's tough, she's gritty, she's hard nosed. So I like this pick for Seattle. I think they needed it, but like they didn't have like a spectacular draft, but they didn't have a bad draft either. So it's just like in the middle.
Yeah. No, I'd agree. I think with it was they did well with what they were dealt. I think going, the last pick in each of the 3 rounds, they just stayed last pick there. They didn't have any moving around. Not disappointed in who they got at those positions. And especially obviously I think all 3 picks with some potential for the future. But they went with potential and didn't when you're Seattle and you're the returning champions, you play it safe. You don't try and make any major trades and changes. And I think that they played it very safe. And we'll see what happens with Seattle. Obviously, moving forward, within just a few days, things change a lot. And so we'll see what happens here. But overall, I think it was a pretty solid draft. There was definitely some surprises. Aneela, you weren't with us when we gave our live draft analysis, so I just want to ask 2 quick questions before we wrap up the episode. Aneela, I want to ask you, who is someone that you were surprised to go as high as they did? Who did you think, wow, I did not have them? Like who to you was the one that stood out? Like, wow, I can't believe they went as high as they did.
It was definitely Kiera Leslie going 10 to Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I agree.
Yeah, I think that's pretty universal. Yeah,
across the board. Yeah. And how about who did you think who were you surprised that had dropped as far as they did?
I'm surprised Megan Gustafson dropped to 17. I mean, I understand why she might have dropped, but to 17 is kind of a little bit of a shock.
Kyle, do you know how much better I feel about myself knowing that I agree with Aneela's takes? That makes me like, oh, my takes are good. Like I've got good takes. I like this.
Yeah, I might know something. No, I agree. Both of those takes were exactly what we'd been saying. Gustafson blew our minds. I was telling everybody she was going to go top 8. I honestly could have seen her going as high as like a 6 to Minnesota. I didn't think she'd break a top 4. But I thought 6 or 7 would be perfect at Minnesota or LA. But to see her drop all the way to 17 blew my mind. Was just super, super surprised by that. So we'll see what happens. That's the thing is it's all conjecture. But at the end of the season, we'll have a totally different take on the majority of these players, I'm sure. And so we'll have to see and check back in, obviously, periodically throughout the season. We just want to, again, thank Aneela so much for joining us. Again, everybody, you can make sure that you find her on Twitter at WHoopsBlogger. Fantastic follow. She's got twice as many followers as we do on Twitter. She's been phenomenal. A great member of that WNBA family. Check out her blog as well, wbasketballblog.com. Some great insights there throughout the NCAA season. Her mock drafts and different takes on there are phenomenal. Please make sure you check that out and make it a regular part of your schedule to hop on and become familiar with her blog. Aneela, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Do you have any last messages for our listeners?
No problem. Thanks, guys, for having me, and make sure to tune in to the 2019 WNBA season just around the corner.
Absolutely. As we say, the best deal in all sports is the WNBA
League Pass.
What am I trying to? Yeah, what am I trying to say? The League Pass. Oh, I don't know. I was thinking the word ticket for some reason. WNBA League Pass is the best deal in all of sports. It's something that all of us pick up. For $20 or less, you can watch every game in the WNBA season across the board. It's phenomenal. And you can go back and watch archived games as well. So make sure that you pick that up. It's less than a ticket to go to a lot of other sports events, and you can get all your WNBA coverage all right there. So, Jason, do you have any last words for our listeners before we sign off?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just kind of go through the rundown as quick as I can. Obviously, we'd appreciate you follow us on Twitter and Facebook, WNBA Weekly. We do have a merch store if you want to get on there. Again, all of the proceeds from our Be a Nobody line are going to buy tickets, which is something we're in the process of working on now. We've got that money set aside, and we're going to find some way this season to get people who have never been to a WNBA game into a seat, and using those funds for that, the Be a Nobody fund. So we appreciate everyone who's purchased that. Also, we have our Patreon. If you want to support the show, we have some kickbacks there. And also, as a lot of you saw, we went live and we had some video coverage and we had some graphics to accompany the WNBA draft. If you liked that, we're going to keep doing some of that stuff. It's not going to necessarily be every week, but we are going to be putting out video content, trying to get that going. And with that, Patreon subscribers will see that stuff first. So if that's something that you're interested in, and if that's something that you enjoyed from us, go ahead and check us out on Patreon there. And even if not, of course, our podcast will always be free, and we appreciate all of you for being listeners. And please go and engage with us on Twitter and Facebook.
Absolutely. Thanks again, listeners. Thanks again to Aneela for joining us. WNBA season's right around the corner, everybody. Let's get ready. We'll be doing some team previews here in the month of May. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be having some more interviews coming up with players, coaches, media personalities from each of the 12 teams. So stay tuned. We're super excited to be bringing you that coverage. But for WNBA Weekly, my name's Kyle Haywood.
I'm Jason Snow.
And with Aneela Kahn, we got you next time.